2022. Call to the order that this meeting is called to order at 6:30 p.m.
Excuse me, it's the wrong date and day.
Oh, Thursday. Sorry. Okay, that's City Council special meeting for the Thursday, April 28, 2022. The meeting is called to order at 6:30 p.m. Please, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Dean.
Here.
Vice Mayor Harrington.
Here.
Councilmember Menchaca.
Here.
Councilmember Rivera.
Here.
Councilmember Wu.
Here.
We will now have some announcement from our Chief City Clerk.
Tonight's meeting is live streamed on Cable Channel 3 and our online platforms. If you wish to address the City Council, we request that you please complete a speaker's request card and hand it to the Assistant City Clerk. If you wish to be added to the distribution list to receive City Council agendas, please email your request to cityclerk@sgch.org.
First item, please.
Public comment. Council will hear from the public after the staff presentation and clarifying questions from Council. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. When speaking, please state your name for the record.
No comment. Public. Okay. Okay. Next item, please.
Study session for proposed budget and capital improvement program for fiscal year 2022 to 2023. Finance Director Kahola Kula will make the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of City Council. Will Kahola Kula, Finance Director for the City of San Gabriel. Tonight it's my pleasure to provide a presentation for the initial study session of the proposed city budget for fiscal year 2022-23. Tonight's presentation will provide a broad overview of the city's fiscal year 2022-23 budget. The presentation will include an analysis of the general fund, which is the main operating fund of the city, as well as all other funds. We'll take a look at the citywide staffing. Our Assistant Finance Director, Linda Tang, will go over the capital improvement program. We'll revisit the fee schedule, and then we'll look at the next steps of our budget process for this fiscal year. So to begin with, we have the proposed all funds budget. So the total all funds budget for the city is $81,406,000. The general fund, the main operating fund of the city, makes up $46,249,000, or 57% of the budget, and the remaining portion is made up of special revenue funds and internal service funds. Out of the all city funds budget, 86% is for our operating expenditures, and 14%, or $11,432,000, is for the capital improvement program. Moving on to the general fund, over the next few slides, we'll take a look at we'll do an analysis of the city's general fund revenues, expenditures, fund balance reserves, as well as examining the projected next 5 years of the general fund. So the fiscal year 2022-23 general fund budget is balanced with a projected surplus of $367,000. Total revenues and transfers in are lower by $1,580,000, and total expenditures and transfers out are higher by $2,373,000. So over the next few slides, we'll analyze the changes to the general fund's revenues, expenditures, as well as take a look at the composition of the revenues and expenditures. So general fund revenue composition. Taxes, as you can see from the pie chart, taxes make up the largest majority of general fund revenues. The second largest portion is our transfers in from our retirement fund. The source of those revenues are actually property taxes. So the general fund revenues are basically made up of 85% of taxes. The remaining portion, $6.8 million, or 15%, makes up the other portion of the general fund revenues. As compared to the prior year, general fund revenue is lower by $1,580,000 or 3.3%. You can see in the change column, in intergovernmental, we see a large reduction of $3,652,000. That reduction is due to the American Rescue Plan Act revenue that we had budgeted last year and we're fully recognizing this year. And there is no new one-time ARPA money for this next fiscal year. We were able, based on the Department of Treasury final rule, the city was able to recognize the full portion of the ARPA revenues to make up for lost revenues, which helped the general fund establish its reserve levels. Other revenues also lower by $670,000, and this is due to us selling our Proposition A funds every other year. So every other year we sell we receive about $750,000 in general fund money as we sell our accumulated Proposition A money, and so we were able to do it this year, but we're not able to do it next year as we need the funds to accumulate. And then, as mentioned previously, taxes make up the largest portion of our general fund, and taxes are up by 10%, or $2,767,000. Over the next couple slides, we'll take a deeper dive into analysis of the general fund tax revenue. All tax categories, except for franchise tax, are projected to be higher for the next fiscal year. As mentioned earlier, overall taxes are up by 10%. We got the three orange highlighted of state sales tax, which is up 14%. Franchise tax, transient occupancy tax, or TOT, is up 45%. And our local sales tax, or measure SG, is up 15%. These three tax categories have been most sensitive to the downturn in the economy and the restrictions from COVID. And so these taxes are rebounding as the economy is opening up and we're moving to a more normal type of, more sense of normalcy. And then the yellow highlighted, we have our property tax, which brings in over about $6.6 million, is projected to have an increase of 3%. And then down below, our property tax in lieu of VLF, which brings in about $5.9 million, also projected to increase about 3%. These are two of the largest tax generators, and they've been shown to be less sensitive to the economy, and they kind of have that continual, steady, and consistent growth. So here's a line chart of our major tax revenues from 2018-19. That was pre-pandemic through the fiscal year that we're talking about right now, 22-23. And then you can see the two lines at the top, the property tax secured, unsecured, and the property tax in lieu of VLF. You can just kind of see how those revenue line items behaved over before the pandemic, during the pandemic, and as we move after the pandemic. It's just been very, very steady at 3%, and property tax is a very stable revenue source. And then we move down to sales tax, and we can see the impact of our state sales tax, of the decrease during the pandemic, and as it's been recovering since hitting the bottom. Utility user tax, which is kind of in the middle. And then we have our transient occupancy tax, which decreased quite a bit during the pandemic from the 2018-19 high, and then it bottomed out during the end of fiscal year 2021, and then it's been recovering ever since. And then at the bottom, you see measure SG kind of come onto the scene, providing an additional over $4 million revenues in fiscal year 2021. So just a couple highlights on the other revenue categories besides taxes. Intergovernmental revenue, we talked about the decrease of the 3.65 million from the not having the ARPA funds this year. Licenses and permits is projecting an increase of 192,000. The three categories that are driving up the majority of the increase are building permits up 55,000, business license tax up 25,000, and overnight parking permits of about 60,000. Fines and forfeitures are projected to be slightly lower by $50,000, as vehicle code fines are not traffic citations are being dismissed by the courts. Moving on to our fees and charges for services. Overall, it's a decrease of $185,000, but we do have a $350,000 reclassification of our pass-through plan check fees. So we reclassified $350,000 of revenue, and we reclassed $350,000 of expenditures. So that's why there is a net decrease, but the overall increase, if you remove the $350,000, the overall increase to charges and services is $165,000, and you can see the department fees and charges is the increase for each department. Public Works up by $25,000, Public Safety up by $57K, Community Services up by $72, and Community Development up by $11K overall. Moving on to general fund expenditures. So here's a composition of our general fund expenditures. As you can see from the pie chart, that personnel makes up the large majority of our general fund expenditures, as cities are in the business of providing services. The personnel expenditure is made up of full-time salaries, benefits, overtime, part-time wages, and pension costs. Operational costs are the supplies and equipment to run operations. Contractual services, the contractual are the services that we contract out. We have the internal service fund allocations. These are allocations from our three internal service fund, our fleet maintenance fund, our risk management fund, and our new for this year, our information technology internal service fund. Debt service is the principal and interest on the one debt that is paid by the general fund, and then transfers out is transfers to other funds, including the Mission Playhouse and a special projects fund. So here's a comparison between the prior year adopted budget and the current year proposed based on categories. So overall, expenditures are projected higher by $2,373,000. The three largest category increases are personnel at an increase of $944,000, the internal service fund allocations of an increase of $1,266,000, and transfers out of $427,000. On the next couple slides, we'll take a look. We'll explain the changes of what's happening in our general fund expenditures. So, personnel increase of $944,000. Part of that increase is increase in full-time salaries, as the council knows that in the prior year there was agreements reached with the city groups where their pay increases were provided. So those increases carried over to this fiscal year, which is the explanation for the full-time salary increases. Employee overtime is increased by $290,000 as overtime is budgeted to realistic levels. The amortization of our CalPERS unfunded accrued liability increased by $305,000. Our workers' comp premiums are lower by $237,000 due to better claim experience during the last years that were examined. And operational is lower by $52,000. which is due to the reorganization of our IT operations, where IT operations used to be in the general fund. Now our IT operations are now in an internal service fund, so those costs went down. Contractual services has a decrease of $130,000. $350,000 of the increase is due to the reclassification of the special project plan checks, where we move that to a grants fund. The reorganization of the IT to an internal service fund reduced contractual services by $111,000. Police department contractual services were up, as there were some new contracts that were entered into last year that are being budgeted this year, and some of the current contracts had increases. City clerk contractual services are up by $42,000 due to election cost, as well as translation services. And then we have our internal service allocations, which are increased by $1.27 million. The large increase in our internal service allocations is coming from our information technology internal service fund. So now we've accumulated all of our IT costs into the one internal service fund. So that's the $808,000, and all of those costs are being allocated to all of the user departments based on the number of CPU units that they have, to get a better number of how much each department is costing. And then transfers out are increased by $427,000. There's a transfer of $300,000 from the general fund to pave the Mission Playhouse parking lot, and there's a transfers of $55,000 for 3 automated parking machines to the special project fund, $60,000 for various police equipment, and then there's the lease payment for the PD Motorola radios of $161,000. So this slide takes a look at general fund expenditures by department. It compares should be 21-22 adopted budget to the 22-23 proposed. And we can see all of the various slight increases and decreases in the various departments. We do have the overall themes of our expenditures that are working in each department. We have the personnel increases due to the contracts that included pay raises, as well as now we're allocating IT costs to all of these departments, and that's the large majority of what's driving all of these increases. And then on this next slide, we have explanations for all of the increases. City council is lower by $12,000, as health insurance is lower by $12,000, and the council expenses are budgeted at pre-COVID levels. Admin and city attorney up by $92,000. The full-time salary, IT allocation driving those increases, as well as a slight increase in prosecution services. City clerk is up by $113,000. The increase in contractual services, IT allocation, and staff development. Finance is actually lower by $342,000, and this is due to that reorganization of our IT operation, moving it to an internal service fund and out of finance. HR is up by $93,000. The IT allocation and an increase in the liability insurance allocation. Police is up by $1.3 million. We had the increases in the full-time salaries. Overtime is budgeted at more realistic amounts. There was an increase in the workers' comp allocation, an increase in the CalPERS UAL, the amortization of the CalPERS UAL of $233. Contractual was up by $106K. They had an IT allocation of $287, and their liability insurance allocation was up by $98,000. Fire up by $386, increases in full-time salaries, overtime pay $75, their CalPERS UAL amortization increase of $251, IT allocation of $109K, and they had a decrease in the workers' comp insurance allocation of $425K. Community development had a decrease of $296K, the large part being that reclass of the special plan check, $350K, that's moved to the grants fund, and then it had an increase in the IT allocation of $115K. Public Works up 431, increase in full-time salaries, IT allocation, and liability insurance allocation. And then community services was slightly up by 69, the majority of that coming from the new IT allocation. So just a few more general fund expenditure highlights. All positions are fully funded, which include prior year increases. All positions except for one in the Mission Playhouse. There's a $300,000 is budgeted for the repaving of the Mission Playhouse parking lot. We have a $350,000 transfer budgeted to the Mission Playhouse to help fund operations. $15,000 is budgeted to fund employee events throughout the year. And there's the $276 transfer that's budgeted to purchase that equipment that's listed of the automated parking permit machines, police equipment, and the lease payment for the Motorola radios. Moving on to the city's general fund balance reserves. The city has a fund balance policy that has a progressive goal of 17% by 2029. The unrestricted portion of fund balance is considered the city reserves. And these reserves, the reserves will be set aside for operating contingencies or other catastrophic events. The fiscal year 2022-23 proposed budget has a projected fund balance reserve of 14.4%, and this exceeds the goal for fiscal year 2023 of 5%. And then additional general fund reserves need to be accumulated for the replacement of major capital equipment, such as major facility maintenance, roofs, AC units, ERP systems and finance, and general plan update and things of that nature. So looking at the general fund 5-year forecast, we can see that in fiscal year 2022-23 proposed, the general fund will have a unrestricted fund balance of $6,680,764, which would give it a 14.4% fund balance reserves. Our fund balance policy goal is 5%, which we exceed for this fiscal year. Moving forward on the projection, with the unrestricted fund balance increasing in 2023-24 to 8.7 million, that would give us an unrestricted fund balance reserve of 18.2%, and at that year we would meet our 17% goal, which currently we've set for 2029. So we're forecasting based on these projections that the goal would be met in 23-24. This forecast includes assumptions for expenditure increases, including a 2.5% COLA for full-time salaries, as well as assumptions for increasing in revenues. So moving on to the other funds, the internal service funds and the special revenue funds of the city. So as mentioned earlier, there are 3 internal service funds of the city. We have the Fleet Services Fund, which is responsible for the maintenance and the replacement of the city's fleet of vehicles. As part of the allocation this year, we've included depreciation expense, which is a non-cash expense, which basically is allowing the Fleet Service Fund to accumulate monies to replace vehicles in the future, to establish a reserve to replace vehicles as needed. The Risk Management Fund is responsible for the administration of the city's worker compensation insurance, general liability, and other insurances. As noted earlier, the workers' comp premiums decreased due to positive claim history, and there was a slight increase in the general liability premiums. And the Information Technology Internal Service Fund is new for this year, and it's provides the IT operations for all city departments. Taking a look at the special revenue funds, expenditures in the special revenue funds are restricted for specific purposes of the fund. Of the special revenue fund expenditures budgeted for fiscal year 2022-23, $10,168,000 is budgeted related for transportation related, $305,000 public safety related, $1.8 million community services related, $3,270,000 related to utilities, and the $11,966,000 for related to development impact, retirement being the big one, and AQMD and other grants. The highlights of the special revenue funds: we have the retirement fund. This is a property tax that restricted for pension cost. The transfer from the retirement fund is $9.4 million to pay for general fund pension cost. The retirement fund is projected to generate new revenue of $9.16 million, and it's budgeted to use $253,000 of reserves to fund the budgeted transfer. The projecting ending fund balance at the end of fiscal year 22-23 is $358,000. The Mission Playhouse, total revenues of $1.13 million, $780,000 generated, $350,000 transfer from the general fund. Total expenditures of the Mission Playhouse, $1,260,000, which will leave a budget shortfall of $130,000. And the projected ending fund balance of the Mission Playhouse is $119,000. One position in the Mission Playhouse has been frozen, and throughout the year, as the council knows, the Mission Playhouse will be monitored and reported on a monthly basis during the year. Special Revenue Fund highlights the Special Projects Funds. This is the Special Project Fund is used for equipment and small capital related purchases. Monies are transferred to these funds from other funds where the purchases are made. As we mentioned, the general fund is transferring $276,000. The Fleet Maintenance Fund is transferring $50,000 for the police vehicle equipment. The Gas Tax Fund is transferring $75,000 for a concrete mixer and hopper. The Sewer Fund is transferring $100,000 for a mini excavator with a utility trailer. AQMD, $169,000 for PD hybrid vehicles, 2 for patrol, 1 for admin, and public works, 2 Gator electric vehicles. Asset forfeiture, $110,000 to pay the other portion of the PD radio lease payment, and community services, $30,000 for tennis court resurfacing and restriping. Moving on to citywide staffing. So the city has a total of 199 authorized positions. There are no new authorized positions for fiscal year 22-23. The one increase from 21-22 was an IT manager position that was authorized during the year. As part of the IT reorg, one position in the police department was moved to IT, which is in the finance department. Some of the highlights of citywide staffing: as mentioned earlier, there are no new positions are requested for the upcoming fiscal year. We talked about the IT manager position. All authorized positions are funded for the fiscal year except one. A management analyst position at the Mission Playhouse is not funded. And there are proposed equity adjustments for 5 full-time positions and 4 part-time positions. The adjustments will establish a salary schedule that are internally equitable and commensurate with actual duties. The estimate cost for the equity adjustments is $33,000. And Assistant Finance Director Linda Tang will provide the presentation on the city's capital improvement plan.
Good evening, mayors, vice mayor, and members of the city council. I'm Linda Tang, Assistant Finance Director. And along with the budget process each year, department also reviews and update our 5-year capital improvement plan as new funding or resources become available. So presented before you is our proposed new and ongoing project using new and available funding for fiscal year 22-23. In total, we are proposing to add $11,432,396 to our current capital improvement program. Of that $11.4 million, approximately $8,551,000 are put towards street improvements. The largest program in this category is our annual street programs, which shows our continuing commitment and effort to improve our pavement condition index by addressing the remaining worst street in the city. Then there's $1,465,000 being put toward traffic signal improvement, a net $74,527,000 put toward the sewer improvement plans. The reason for the negative $253,350 is the release of funding for our sewer master plan. Originally, the plan was budgeted at $500,000, and our public works department have determined that it will cost less than that. Therefore, they're releasing that funding from that particular project. Then there are $500,000 that are budgeted toward parks for Smith Park Pool Facility, and $842,199 toward other improvement. And again, you see on the list the $300,000 for the repavement of the Mission Playhouse parking lot. Then on this next table is a high summary of our CIP by category by fiscal year. Current fiscal year capital improvement plan is being represented by the total funded column totaling $21,554,979. For fiscal year 22-23, you see the $11.4 million that were presented on the previous slide. And fiscal year 23-24 and 24-25, they represent future plans for known resources. With this, I want to circle back to the current year funded project to give you some preliminary updates as the fiscal year is not completed. So I will give you some information on what I have to date. So currently, of the $21,554,000, we have expended $7,064,236. And I would like to provide you by category to make it more informative and informational for your use. Of the $7 million in category for street, we have expended $5,878,000. And I just want to go a little bit deeper in this category. As you can see, for current year, we have budgeted $12,861,000. The reason for, because there's such a big discrepancy, I just want to give you some highlights on a few projects that are in fact happening now, but it's not reflected on our book. First of all, we have 3 Valley Boulevard intersection improvement totaling more than $3.2 million, funded by our Measure R reimbursable 710 freeway cancellation funding. That is happening now, not seen on a book. The reason for that is because we contract with Metro to perform all the design work. So whereas we don't see it in expenditure, it's happening. They are withdrawing from our funds. Second, we have a $69,800 project called the we call it the county paving program, that we also do not see any actual expenditure on our book, but is happening. Reason for that is a joint project between us and the county to do repaving work in the city, and a lot of that is happening on the east side of St. Gabriel Street. And that is being funded by our Surface Transportation Program grant. So again, it's not taken out of our book, and they're basically withdrawing, or we're actually contracting and passing it through to the county. Third, we have a more than $900,000 budgeted for our Broadway and Walnut Grove project that is on hold. Reason for that is there are challenges with right-of-way acquisition on one of the corner of the street. Therefore, that's what makes up the difference. As you see, since we're now 75% into the year, and then an actual expenditure of 5.8 million may seem kind of low, but in fact, there's stuff happening behind the scene that we're not seeing it on our book, and reasons for some delay in some of those projects. The second category we have there for traffic signal, we have expended, $863,000 of the 1.5 million. There's nothing in the storm drains. For sewer system, of the 6,354,000, we have expended approximately 50,000. Now let me explain that, why there's such a big, huge difference. Other than a sewer lift station project that is going to go to council soon, the remainder of the projects in the sewer program is strategically being put on hold pending a revised sewer master plan. Our Public Works Department certainly do not want to rip up the street twice for projects that they know they may have changes to in the future based on the sewer master plan. Therefore, a majority of that funds have not been spent. Moving on to a parks system, we have budgeted $259,372. $0 has been spent on that. Originally, this budget is for our portion with a much bigger grant that we have applied for that did not proceed. So we will certainly move that forward to next year for other projects and another project in next year. For public facility, of the 275,000, we have expended 191,000 for the police and fire department. The last category that we have on here for others, for 234,000, we have expended approximately 18,000 toward the citywide bridge repair. And the reason for these budget right here, the actual expenditure is actually unknown, but we put a budget for potential repair that Caltrans inspection might come back and ask us to do. Therefore, the budget is put there. We have no true knowledge of how much exactly we're going to be spending on the bridge repair, although our bridge repair have been fairly new, on good shape, but we just put for potential repair that's needed in the future. So that is our current update, the preliminary update for the current year funded CIP programs. And I just want to make a mention that whatever is remaining at the end of this fiscal year, the total funded is currently all approved, funded 21-22, and by the end of fiscal year, whatever is remaining, we will be carrying it forward and continue the project in 22-23. A fee schedule.
Thank you, Linda. Just a couple more slides here. So the fee schedule, as the City Council remembers, at our April 19th regular City Council meeting, the proposed fee schedule was presented to Council. The Council discussed and debated the fee schedule. Based on that direction, the rate for appeals will be set at $1,000 per appeal, and the new fee for the historic preservation designation and the Mills Act program will be brought before the Historic Preservation Commission for a free recommendation. Based on their feedback, we will bring back the fee schedule to the City Council at the June 7th meeting for additional consideration and possible adoption. So next steps. So today we're doing the initial budget study session. In the month of May, we'll have meetings with individual council members to review the proposed budget. And then we'll come back on June 7th at the regular city council meeting to conduct a public hearing and the possible adoption of the proposed budget, CIP program, and schedule of fees. If not then we'll come back in June 21st and bring back the budget document for adoption, and then July 1st, 2022, we'll begin the new fiscal year. That concludes the presentation. We'll take any questions that you have.
And Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I just want to add, we'll put that presentation on our website tomorrow so the public can see all of those numbers and all of the detail that Will and Linda presented, and you'll all have copies of that as well for your own reference.
Does any council member have the factual question for staff for clarify for the report? I see none. Chief City Clerk, do we have any public comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have several emailed comments, and then we have speakers in person.
Okay.
The first comment comes from Chastity Jennings Nunez, MD, and reads as follows. To the City Council, City Manager, Advising Council, and staff, the budget for the Police Department is more than twice that of the Public Works, Community Development, and Community Services Departments combined. 64% of the entire city budget goes to the police and fire departments. All of the remaining functions of the city and city government are then funded on the leftover 36%. Is it really a surprise then that our roads were allowed to fall into such severe disrepair, or that the Mission District, San Gabriel Boulevard, and many places in South San Gabriel in particular have seen little in the way of development or investment? It should not be a surprise that if the majority of the budget is spent in two areas, that there are no significant services sponsored by the city to prevent residents from falling into the population of unhoused people, and that we are repeatedly told there is no money for social services. It is time for a change. That public safety is only defined by the police and fire departments is a perpetuated misconception that has led to a one-side, unequal city budget that leaves all other areas underfunded. Public safety begins in the home, extends into the neighborhood, and then expands to include the community that we live in. To feel safe, we must know that we can keep a roof over our heads, feed ourselves and family, and find work that sustains us. Feeling safe means being able to get medical care when you need it and being able to find help for your family member if they are showing signs of mental illness. If you live in a home where there is abuse or substance use, or you are a senior who has to decide between paying for food, rent, or medication every month, your sense of safety is defined by the four walls around you. Public safety is fostered by activities that encourage communication, interaction, respect, and appreciation for others in the community. At the last City Council meeting, all 5 City Council members agreed to spend $10,000 to $15,000 to find a way to spend a minimum of $400,000 to replicate the LA County system to prosecute misdemeanors. What programs is the City Council planning to take at least $400,000 from in the 2022-23 budget to fund this ill-conceived plan? A robust program of social services and community development is the proven way to prevent crime. I want crime prevention, not more people to come in after a crime has been committed. The next comment is from Andrew and reads as follows. Hello. Pickleball is a popular sport and is here to stay. It's a sport that brings together all residents of San Gabriel together, the elders with teenagers, families, neighbors. It is a great, good impact to our community. We could use permanent courts. It definitely brings positive image to the city. The next comment is from San Gabriel resident Mitch Borgeson and reads as follows. Hello, I am writing in support of permanent pickleball courts at Smith Park. I play at the temporary courts there 4 to 5 times a week and can attest to the tremendous positive impact the game has had on the health and well-being of the San Gabriel community. It brings people together of all ages and backgrounds and is a great way for everyone from kids to retired folks to stay active. I think San Gabriel as a city can benefit from adding permanent pickleball courts by attracting players from inside and outside of the city and taking advantage of the huge rise in pickleball's popularity to be a leader amongst SGV cities. Pickleball's efficiency using space and community building nature makes it a perfect game for San Gabriel to invest in with permanent courts and facilities. The next comment is from Sonia Lynn and reads as follows. Please include funding for permanent pickleball nets in the budget. This is an important exercise activity for 16 to 30 players each morning, Monday to Thursdays and Saturday when the city puts up the nets. But at other times we want to play but have no net. Adding permanent nets will be less costly if done when the courts are resurfaced in a few months, and will save the ongoing costs of replacing nets and net systems, plus the cost for staff hours to set up and break down the temporary nets 5 days a week. Thank you for your consideration. That completes the emailed comments, and now we have a speaker card from Jean Rhea.
Good evening. Actually, I had planned to comment in general on how this process can be made more digestible to the general public. It would have been nice to have had this instead of 196 pages sent out with a couple days to look at it. And I'm glad to hear that you will be sending this out to, or at least posting it so it's available. I still would advocate for possibly the city having another presentation using these slides, because I think this would give residents an opportunity to make thoughtful comments on the budget rather than, you know, just kind of picking out the one or two things that are particularly important to them. So thank you to the staff. I think that's great.
Is there anyone else wishing to address council?
Okay. All right. It's now time for council discussion. Who will be like to start? Okay.
I'll start,
Okay.
if you insist.
Councilmember Menchaca.
Thank you. First of all, thank you to staff for putting this together, and I agree that this version would have been helpful even for myself. I was trying to understand why Councilmember Wu had it and I didn't, and apparently it was up in front. So, you know, maybe going forward, having this information for council as well as the public in advance would be my suggestion. I know this is mostly a kickoff and more of an overview, and so the line-by-line deltas, we'll have those conversations later as the schedule showed. So I'm just going to make some comments, just real general comments. First, we'll start with the ARPA funds. Want to make sure it's clear to everyone that all the ARPA funds went into the cash reserves except for the business grants that the council approved, the $175,000. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, that's correct. $175,000 was appropriated for the business assistant grants.
But everything else went to our reserves, so this is why we have, we've finally been able to build up our reserves. That's correct, okay.
Correct.
Street expenditures, let's see, if we go to page 148, which is almost the last page, there's a list of different funds there, and of what the funding sources are. Totals 11.4. So my question is, where is the 710 funding out of all those different funds? Are they listed there, or is that separate?
That's listed there. It's under Measure R, which is fund number 58.
Okay. So is Measure R all of the 710, or is it a partial?
I'm sorry, let me get this information for you. The the Measure R, not 100% of it is from the 710. The annual street program is from the annual allocation from Measure R, whereas the other projects relating more to the Valley Boulevard.
So is the 710 all just for Valley? That's all?
No, I mean for the current year, yes. The
Okay.
current year, there are 3 Valley Boulevard intersection program that is from the measure R710 reimbursable. The following year, this next fiscal year for 22-23, we have added more, and it's not just for Valley. And now it includes San Gabriel Boulevard Marshall realignment project, plus the Mission and Las Tunas intersection improvement.
Okay, okay, thank you. Yeah, it might be helpful just to maybe to note it somehow, the 710, because those are just one-time funding over, is it 3 years or?
Right, I mean, if we've been allotted a $25 million, and it's a reimbursable basis, we don't get it annually. We would have to expend it first and request for reimbursement quarterly. So it's over a course of number of years, and those are large projects again. So for the Valley part that I have mentioned, more than 3.2 million, they're starting it off already for the design phase, and they will withdraw that from that funding.
Okay,
Starting in the construction phase, that when we will start seeing the expenditure hit our book, and you'll see the actual numbers.
so do you suspect we'll spend that over 3 years? Is that what you're saying, or?
5 years. 5 years.
Next question's for you, Greg, so you might as well come on down. Oh, please. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'm Greg DeVink, the Public Works Director and City Engineer, and I'm here to answer the next question.
Well, you were raising your hand on the 710, so.
It was 5 years.
Oh, 5? Oh, that's what that meant. Okay, thank you. You were raising your hand. 5 years, not 3 years. Okay. So there should be lots of work for that neighborhood, and hopefully we can keep them informed about all the work that's being done.
Yes, it's a total of, I believe, 7 projects for 25 million. And one of them is the traffic cabinets that we've already purchased, and they're being installed at a rate of 2 a week right now, is what we're trying to move in the next few months, as well as a fiber optic design project and construction to run fiber along Valley Boulevard and San Gabriel Boulevard. And so that's almost done with design, so you'll see that happening in the next fiscal year as well.
Okay, thank you. Then now I recall, and so maybe you can help me out, we had spent just on streets alone 12.9, was it over 3 years? It was 23 miles of roads. Could you just remind us, because we've made significant investments in our roads. I think it's the past 3 years, but maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong.
It's close to correct. Over the past 3 years, I actually brought a cheat sheet of what we've done the last 3 years. The last year was actually our largest paving project, where we put essentially, in most locations, a new 4-inch rubberized asphalt street over our very deficiently thin, crumbling streets, and made a very big dent in our PCI, addressing the worst streets in a new manner than we used to. We used to remove the entire street and remove all the base material and rejuvenate it and put back a whole new street. And it was very expensive, and our revenue stream was not enough to keep up with our degrading problem and ever address all of our bad streets. So the last year it was funded over $6 million for that project. We spent five and a half. Whatever we don't spend rolls over. We never spend 100% because we want to be careful not to go over budget. The prior year, for fiscal year, I guess it's 2021, we did the asphalt rubber overlay project and slurry, and that did a lot. I believe it's in the realm of 12 miles in a very affordable process to slow down the degradation of our medium streets. That was another 1.2 million. The year before that, we actually did 2 projects that were titled Great Streets. One was funded by iBank Accelerated Streets, and we took money that was previously allocated for Del Mar, which couldn't happen because of the Edison undergrounding and the Curio Hotel development. And we did a couple streets with that. And then the remainder of our normal grant funds for Great Streets projects, we did additional streets, and that was the traditional method of full remove and replace. We did Built-in and Orange that way. And that's our most recent cost for that. It was coming out to be 1.2 million per mile. It's just not a sustainable solution for our streets. I did miss one. It's actually in construction right now, and that is the project Linda referred to earlier, where we're doing it jointly with the county. So that is also happening now, where we've committed $600,000 of future STPL money, where they will withhold the grant and just do the work. So it's no money out of our pocket, and it's a grant. So it doesn't have an impact on our general fund. And they're doing the streets in the northeast area of the city, where the boundaries are very commingled, and our right-of-way goes down the center of the street and then jogs over and back. And really neither one of us could independently pave our own section, because it would look like a puzzle, and people would just think, who did this terrible job? So we got together, we're doing it as a joint project. They're managing it as our grant administrator. And then similarly, we have next year planned to do with them repaving Broadway and Walnut Grove, two of our remaining terrible condition streets in the northeast area of the city.
So are we at 12 million? Because you said the numbers were different for the last 3 years?
No, we're closer to 10.5.
10.5.
But the unspent money is money that rolls over.
Okay, because we have 10.5 plus 8 million just for this coming year, so close to $20 million just in streets alone.
Yes,
that we've
but
invested.
As mentioned earlier, some of that is Metro 710 funded projects, so it's grant money that they're managing. It's in the design phase. You won't see it as an expenditure.
Okay.
We will just get slightly less than the 25 million awarded. The 3 intersections on Valley alone are about $12.5 million.
Okay, great. And I was trying to also understand about the paving of the alleys. I had read somewhere that the goal was to pave every single alley in this city, which is a great goal to have, because they've always been neglected. Where is that in the budget? Is it under streets, or have you separated it?
It's under streets in the next coming street project. So,
and how much is that to pave every single alley?
just the alleys? I don't have a breakdown in front of me, but a ballpark of $1 million, $1.5 million.
Okay.
They tend to be a little cheaper because they're narrow and we pay per square foot. And we will put it out as part of a larger project to get the economy of scale and hopefully a lower unit cost. The same will hold true where we have broken out as a separate project to pave the Mission Playhouse parking lot. I would like to include that in the broader street paving contract, not pay for a second mobilization, not pay a higher unit cost. So when we eventually come back with an award, we will in the staff report clarify we're doing the annual street project and the Mission Playhouse, 2 separate CIPs in one contract.
And so the alleys, I'm going to go back to the alleys. Is this within a year, 2 years? What is the timeline for the alleys?
Yeah, as part of this next project, we should be advertising in a month or 2. And there's a lot of considerations for it because I'm including Delmar, where the utilities are being undergrounded, and then after that we have to install a new sewer. So you'll start seeing sewer spending, but we're needing to time that. So we're working with Edison, who is currently going to finish. They're tentatively scheduled for finishing in June. We want to immediately follow and tear up the street again and put in our sewer. As soon as that's done, we're hoping the paving contractor is in town still to do that. Another consideration is Girona. That got delayed last year because the water company informed us they're going to replace the water main. That doesn't even start until September. So we may be delaying streets slightly to hope to keep them in town when those other streets become available. They are included in the biddable scope. But to actually answer your question, we're hoping it's all done this calendar year. So hopefully by...
Calendar, so January to, not fiscal. January
calendar.
to December.
We're hoping all of these alleys are addressed and almost all of the remaining poor condition streets I'm hoping to be addressed this calendar year. We are intentionally delaying a few. An example is Gladys near the Public Works building where the nursery site's being developed and they've agreed to pay to do some of the resurfacing. We're intentionally not including Valley, which we all know is terrible because of the metro projects taking care of the intersections.
Yeah.
They will pave the intersections. We've recently applied for another grant that we hope will fund the rest of Valley between the intersections. And we've already got confirmation that if we put it all out as one bid, that grant will consider the intersections as our in-kind match. So we really won't have to produce a match of our own funds. We're using Measure R funds as the match for another grant to pave the streets. Tentatively, I'm hoping construction for that is in 2024, largely because all three intersections require small right-of-way acquisitions, and that tends to add a year right there.
So if a resident wants to know when their alley is, back to the alleys.
Yeah.
If a resident wants to know whether, what the timeline is for their alleys, will you have that on your system? You have the, I think, is it called the GS system or the?
We will have the map on GIS that'll show
GIS.
where, and it's defined by project name, so they'll see it lumped as next year's project. It does not list a time frame, and we don't actually know exactly till we actually go out to bid and work with the contractor. They might not be available to start for a month.
Okay.
We will get a time frame from them, and we update schedules as we go along. It's more in their control for means and methods. But realistically, I would say September through December is our best guess to do the Playhouse parking lot, all the streets and the alleys that are in the next project.
That was my next question on the Mission Playhouse. Okay, September, so we're missing the summer, but there are still quite a few events from September through December.
Yes, but again, one reason not to jump on it so quickly is I don't want the contractor to move out of town before Girona and Del Mar are ready for them. Because
Okay.
then we'd pay another remobilization charge, and that can be quite substantial.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all I have for you, Greg. Okay, now I'm going to move into the Mission Playhouse updates. I see Rebecca and Elias, and again, I need to show my appreciation and recognition because, they've been doing their diligence with being fiscally responsible and really focusing on minimizing the budget there. I wanted to ask the plan to track its progress. For the Mission Playhouse, are we going to be getting quarterly updates or semi-annual? I'm looking at Rebecca and Elias. I'm not sure if that's William or is that because the Mission Playhouse is one that we really need to watch carefully, and just to kind of give some history and correct me, Will, if I'm wrong. We went up as high, or maybe Mark, as high as $850,000 encroachment on the general fund, and so we're now down to, what was it, 350. Although I did have a question for you, Will, because you said we were going to have a negative balance of 119, but we should never have a negative balance. I mean, why aren't we just moving more monies over as opposed to just the 350?
Yeah, I think Councilmember Menchaca, the thought is that we're going in with the budgeted $119,000. I think the hope is that as we operate during the year, we'll continue to monitor it, to report on it. We do have one funded vacancy right now where we'll get some vacancy savings that will eat up some of the deficit, the budgeted deficit. And I think the hope is at the end of the year, we'll be able to project that we're going to end up at a balanced zero fund balance in the Mission Playhouse.
Okay, so we're going to monitor it. How often?
Yeah, we report on that on a monthly basis to the City Council. We provide the monthly budget updates of the general fund, and then we've been including the Mission Playhouse in there as well.
Okay, so we're not going to have a separate discussion. It's strictly the monthly updates.
The monthly updates.
Okay, so if we have any questions or if we see anything kind of going the wrong direction, that's the time we would bring it up.
That's correct, and then as well as the mid-year budget update will be more of a formal update.
And we can always modify it mid-year if the freezing of the salaries or maybe the new fee schedule changes things around a bit, so we don't get that $120,000 deficit.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
And I wanted just to see Rebecca and Elias. Can you share with us? I know you're very hopeful. Is the word, because I've had conversations with you. Maybe share with us, the council and the public, where you see things really turning around for us this year, post-pandemic. For example, I know you've been able to have rentals are probably higher than ever before. You're seeing a real strong comeback. So if you can just share a little bit.
I can address, good evening, council. I can address a little bit, and then Elias may have some to add as well. We have had an increase in rentals, and as you may have heard, we've had a lot of dance competitions, which are great revenue generators for us, and actually include a whole weekend of events at the Playhouse, and so that has really been a big generator. It's also a lot of staff time that's involved with that, just because there is a group in for the entire weekend. But our rentals have really increased, and as you saw, there were some additional proposed fees as part of the fee schedule that will help enhance that as well. So I'll leave it to Elias if he has anything to add.
Sounds good. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So yeah, to add to what Rebecca said, I'm going to call it before COVID or BC. We had proposed an increase in our fee schedule that would hopefully drive clients, smaller clients, to the weekend day or weekdays, and more wealthy clients to the weekends to try to bolster our whole season and make the Playhouse more rentable throughout the entire week. Right when that was passed and we started to see some progress move in that direction, COVID hit, and so we had to shut down. So we never recognized any of that revenue, or that revenue potential, I should say. As we start to see all of these rentals pick back up, we are now finally starting to see that happening. For example, we have about 4 non-use days in the month of May. Every other day in May has somebody in the building who is paying us to use the facility, which is fantastic. In addition to that, we are generating a lot more revenue than anticipated with concessions as we've started that program back up, and parking. So all of that combined, plus our becoming the dance capital of the world, I guess, has really generated a lot of revenue and a lot of foot traffic for the area. I will say that Blossom Market sells out of food just about every time we have a dance competition, and so that's great.
They've actually mentioned to me how they have record sales every time there's a dance competition. That just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Yep. So it's a win for everyone. It really is.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, I've talked to the folks at Luna's and surrounding businesses. They all really enjoy when we are busy, and we enjoy being busy as well.
Great. Thank you. Thank you for that update.
You bet.
Okay. My next question is for the Information Technology Department. I'm not sure if the is that Will? Oh, okay, Will. And maybe Mark could give a little history too here. You know, we've had a very, I guess, a painful history with our IT, very patchwork, where you have every department seemed to have their own IT. Either it was grassroots, someone in the department just showed some kind of aptitude, and all of a sudden they became the IT expert for that department, or we would, you know, contract it out, or not we, but each department. So everyone was doing their own thing, and then now we have a department which hasn't quite, I guess, started, but now we have some consistencies, hopefully some economies of scale. But I wanted for someone to share, especially for our new council members. It's been a process since the day I became a council person back in 2017. We've been having these discussions, and it seems like we finally have a department, but we still have, you know, access points that don't work. We have Wi-Fi that's so slow. The meeting we had for the HERE Commission on Tuesday was awful. And it was really awful. They had a great speaker, and okay, turning on, turning off, or you couldn't speak, you couldn't hear them. So we still have a long way to go, but I just like to know what the timeline would be also. So give us some history, what the timeline is for us to start seeing some benefits. And I'm hoping this meeting is being televised properly, because as I said in the past, you know, more and more people are watching us. It's great to see those views, but if it's not coming on TV properly, I mean, I get, every time there's a council meeting, I get an email from one particular resident, which I'm glad he does that, you know, telling us it's, you know, the viewing, the televising is awful. We can't watch it on TV. So kind of share with us what do we predict and what are we doing to make sure at least that part of it, the videotaping and just the Wi-Fi in general. I mean, if you're at the Mission Playhouse, there's no Wi-Fi really. It is very, very frustrating, but maybe Mark or Will.
Will, if you don't mind, I'll do a quick history and then turn it over to you for the last question on the timelines for the access points and improving the Wi-Fi. But Councilwoman Menchaca, I think you gave a great overview of how we progressed over the last few years, what our deficiencies were, where we started, and some of the things we're trying to do. We were very much patchwork or hodgepodge way of doing IT throughout the entire city. And when I say city, I mean the entire organization. Sometimes we refer to the city just as, City Hall or the Public Works Department and that group. But we had different service providers for different parts of the city. When we did some looking into it, I'm sad to say that, as an example, our fire department didn't have access to our finance systems until as recently as several months ago, which that should not have been the case for as long as it has been that way. So when we started realizing these deficiencies, Will, when he came on board about a year ago, just over a year ago now, I asked him for his first task before he got inundated with everything else to take a hard look at our IT infrastructure and the way we funded it and the way we had personnel assigned. And he took that on with vigor and started looking at a better model. About the middle of him doing that is when we had an issue with our police department security last year. And that was a very quick eye-opener on some of the issues we were facing from an infrastructure standpoint. And so from last summer till now, it's been a very fast-paced replacement of all of those key systems that we had. Infrastructure, like the backbone of our network, all of the security. We started with the security because we wanted to make sure we weren't held hostage for ransomware as some other communities have been. And so some things that would have been more community facing, like the quality of broadcast and others, were put on hold until we could get those core backs of the office systems more hardened, to use that terminology. What happened at the HEAR Commission, I apologize for that this last week, and that's actually we're a victim of our own success. We invigorated our backup process. That starts at night when everybody goes home and turns off their computers. And we have that backup sending everything to the cloud so that if we are ever held up for ransomware or we have some sort of malware on our systems, we're never more than a few hours behind that we can reestablish our systems. And without boring everybody with details, that system kicks on at night when, as I said, everybody turns on their computers, and it takes up all of our bandwidth. So by the next morning when everybody turns back on, they don't notice that interruption. And long story short, we didn't realize that was set up for the other night and didn't coordinate with the folks that were doing the meeting. And so that kicked on in the middle of the meeting. And so again, we were a victim of trying to be better at that side of it. So that's taken care of into the future. We are coordinating better with that. We are looking to increase our upload width so it's not a situation going forward. And then as far as the specifics on the broadcast for the cable channel, YouTube sounds great. YouTube works great. I went on a few minutes ago and was watching just to make sure it was all working well, and it does. But for some reason, our equipment that handles the transfer from YouTube to cable needs some work, and so Monday we have an audiologist coming in to help us with that, or an audio technical specialist coming in to help us with that part. So very soon we will have all of our broadcasts down to a science, and I'm confident we'll be back up to the levels we should be for all of that. It's great that people actually notice that we're not doing a good job, because it means people are actually watching it. And we all forget that 3 years ago, right when COVID was starting, we weren't even televising these meetings. So I feel like we're kind of a victim of our own success in that now we're televising our commission meetings where that was not even taped before. But it's what people should expect, and they have a right to expect that. So we will live up to that expectation and continue to get better in that aspect. And then I'll let Will respond. We are also increasing the technology for the Wi-Fi in all of our city facilities, and that should be happening very shortly.
Yes, Councilmember Menchaca. With the council's approval during last year, we did the reorganization of the IT operation. Council approved for the hiring of an IT manager. So in January 2010, we hired an IT manager, David Suen. Looking forward to introducing him to you next council meeting. As part of that, as part of hiring an IT manager, we took IT all under one roof, if you will. So there's the IT operation that's under finance. We brought over the IT specialist who was in the police department over into the IT operation. So now there's a three, and then we also approved funding for the second full-time, the city council approved funding for the second full-time IT specialist. So now the team is made up of a full-time IT manager, 2 full-time IT specialists. Bringing on the IT manager, we were able to transition from contractual IT services and have our own in-house IT manager. We feel very fortunate with the IT manager who we hired. He came from Montebello with over 20 years experience in a lot of the same systems. Those guys have been working very, very hard since David started in January. David Suen started in January of this year. Their main focus has been first the security of our systems. They started here with City Hall, and then from there they moved to the police department. And from there, they're just continuing to make improvements. I know they made improvements to our Wi-Fi. They're in the process of purchasing equipment right now, which has slowed them down a little bit. I know we have $30,000 worth of unfilled POs that we're still waiting for equipment to be delivered. But the improvements have been maybe not seen as far as kind of the Wi-Fi, the more external stuff, but internally they've made a lot of progress. And the team is well functioning. It's a very strong unit, very, very responsive. And and David Suen is just highly competent. So I think over the next 6 months with their efforts and his expertise and the equipment coming in, I think overall, and then just working out these little bugs that pop up, not having enough bandwidth to continue to stream when we're doing the backup, just kind of learning these little missteps. I think over the next few months, you'll be able to notice fast improvements.
Great. So it's within the next 6 months, hopefully Wi-Fi sooner than later, especially during the summer as we start picking up with a lot of visitors and events.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Next is Smith Park. I know I saw $500,000 being allocated. Is there a plan that you've been working with our Community Services Commission of how those monies are going to be spent? Because we did have some comments about pickleball. I know there's going to be, I think with the CIP, we were going to resurface the tennis courts at Smith Park, I think is part of the plan, but is there more?
So that is a small portion. That's not part of that 500,000 that was listed in the CIP. That is a smaller portion. The city has been collecting a tennis fee for all of our tennis classes. As people take those classes, there's a small fee that's collected that has been used traditionally to help fund those improvements and or tennis nets as they're needed, those sorts of things. So that's what the resurfacing will be paid for out of, is that fund that has been raised. The 500,000 is made up of a couple of different funding sources. Some of that is, we did receive a per capita Prop 68 funds, and that's just been approved. So those are funds that were actually due to the city. It wasn't a competitive grant like the other Prop 68 funds were. So the part of that is that Prop 68 per capita. There's also some Measure A funds, and then some of that is park improvement funds as well. And that item will actually be going to the commission, not at this next meeting, which is next week, but in June, as part of that.
And does it include, for example, I know for the Kiwanis, we had access to that area, and there's some significant improvements that need to be made at the front the bathroom stalls and that whole area. Is any of those monies going to make those improvements?
We've not discussed, unfortunately, yet exactly what that's going to improve. Likely that will be some of the pool improvements is what we've estimated, and some of those are pool improvements that need to be made. They're not just we'd like to have these improvements. So likely it would not include the building at this point, which is the area that you're referring to. But that being said, you also saw that Linda had an amount that was being moved forward that hadn't been utilized for another project, so we might be able to look at what we can do with that. Unfortunately, we weren't successful with the Prop 68, otherwise we would have had a brand new facility, and that also would have included the added pickleball court is what we were proposing with that grant. So at this time, we don't know about another funding source for that grant or another round of funding for that grant.
And that grant was it 6.8 or what was the amount?
Oh my gosh, my memory's escaping me. I think it was 8.6.
8.6. Okay,
Yeah.
I had it backwards.
It was a
So you have a
big
plan already because for the grant you had to itemize how you would spend the grant. So you do have the plan. It's just a matter of now narrowing it down from 8.6 to 500,000.
Exactly.
Wow.
And really
Okay.
looking at the things that absolutely need to move forward, and the pool is one of those areas that has long time needed those improvements.
Thank you for that. And then lastly, just on a general basis, the pension liability, we've had conversations for at least the last 2 years, so I'm hoping we can move forward soon. What's the timeline on that? Do we know?
We do. We are waiting until we have our year-end financial report and our audits. Our credit will be much better at that point because we will have then a positive fund balance, an unrestricted fund balance, which is the key. And at that point, we would be a credit-worthy risk that banks and lenders would look at, and the interest rates would be enough that we could then contemplate whether the risk is worth doing. In the meantime, we do have some information to present in closed session that we'll be doing at one of our next couple meetings to talk about some of the reports that we've done, the actuarial reports that we've done.
Okay, thank you. And then, well, salaries, we're in the midst of negotiations, so there's not much we can really comment tonight. But, I mean, we are looking at that too. But that's all personnel matters, so it's all closed session. And that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think she covered everything.
Okay.
Yeah. We kind of had a meeting with Mark prior to the study because we're 2 new council members. So we had a very informational meeting with him and kind of went over a lot of stuff. So
Okay. Good.
thank you, staff, though, for the report. I know that this takes a lot of time. As a business owner, I know how important this is and that it takes a lot of time. So I appreciate your time for everything that you do. Thank you.
And the council member Wu.
Thank you, Mayor Dean, and thank you, staff, for the great report. I do have a couple questions about the funding. I know that about the intergovernmental funds that we actually have a tremendous reduced because the ARPA funding is no longer available. That's correct, right?
Yes, Councilmember, yes.
So I do see that you leave the county grants blank. I mean, it doesn't mean that we don't have grants or we are still in process of applying. So is that because we are more conservative not to put the numbers there yet? Or
no, Councilmember. The reason we don't have any numbers is we're not expecting at this point any county grants. If there were county grants that we knew about, we would have budgeted for them for the next fiscal year.
So that means we are not expecting, but that somehow can surprise us that there's a grant coming in.
Yes. Yeah,
Because
at this point, we're not aware, but if someone applies for a grant and the grant money comes in, then we would, it would be included in the next fiscal year.
I see. And my second question is about, I'm echoing Councilmember Machenga about the IT. The IT part, I do see that we have invested in this to integrate it, the whole system. That means now we have more unified IT services. But I want to know if we are going to to improve our websites, and I do notice that we have St. Gabriel City apps, and I downloaded it, and it doesn't really reflect what we expected. So do we outsource those kind of services for other people to design that, or our IT teams, they can handle it without any extra charge?
Currently, my understanding is our city website is each department is responsible for their own kind of design and update. And I believe the Public Information Office is also takes a role in keeping the website updated. So it's all pretty much done in-house as far as the current updates of the city website.
I'll add to that,
Sure.
Councilmember Wu, that one of Clara's tasks that she has in the near future is to update our website. We do have a company that manages it, and it's a very standard format that other cities use that use the same company. But we are looking at a redesign and a refresh, and Clara is looking how to integrate that with the information she puts out, so that when she puts something out on social media, it can quickly and easily point to somewhere on the website that has that up-to-date information.
So what about the app for the cell phone? Do we have any plan for the apps?
She's looking at that as well. That is something that a lot of our community uses, not so much to find information, but to report problems. And we want to make that more robust, because right now some of the reporting doesn't go where it needs to go within the city, or it's not as, I shouldn't say that, it's not as readily available who you report something to when you're out in the field. So yes, we are updating that. It's a little lower on the priority list than the website, because so many more people use the website, but that is absolutely something that we're working on.
Thank you. I think the apps is, sometimes it's costly to, to develop a new good apps that allows people, is more user-friendly to report the problems about the city, take a photo, or maybe file complaints. So I think that apps is important. And I have a question about the pool. So can I ask you, or maybe Rebecca will help me to? Hi, Rebecca. Thank you, Will. My question is, I just want to confirm the $500,000, that is only for the pool area in Smith Park, but not the building at all.
Right, so the estimate that in our Public Works Department helped us with that estimate was for the replastering of the pool and the deck work that needs to be done. So it was primarily just for the pool area.
So actually, I've seen that the pool, and I have seen that the buildings inside, and the changing room, shower rooms, or even the bathroom is like a very lack of privacy. So I think that do we have any like midterms or long-term plans for that to improve that facility?
So as I mentioned, that was actually part of a grant that we had applied for, which is the Prop 68 that we were talking about. We actually applied for that twice and were unsuccessful 2 times, unfortunately. So that request would have funded actually an entirely new facility. It would have actually expanded the pool and provided for a brand new facility. Unfortunately, that funding wasn't received, and so at this point we're looking at kind of the things that really need to be done, which is the pool at this time. The dressing rooms, as I'm well aware that they're definitely in need of improvement. And so we will be looking at that and seeing what we can do to do that, and what funds we have available. At this point, we'd be looking at using either impact fees, park impact fees, which we do have some available that we could use. We also are receiving Measure A funds from the county, so those would be also potentially available. It's unfortunately not the same amount of money that the project requires, what we were looking to do, which is why that funding would have been ideal to be able to do that. So we'll be needing to look at those and see what we can do with the funds that we currently have available.
I see. So I noticed Smith Park and Roosevelt Park that actually they have a company, a private sector. They donated to us that they renovate the playgrounds for us for no cost to the city. Is this something that could be done for the Smith Park swimming pool?
Are you talking about the Kaboom playgrounds that we
Yes,
had?
Kaboom playground.
So
yes.
that is strictly playgrounds that they do. We are looking at another possible Kaboom application for our joint use facility at Coolidge Elementary, but they strictly do playgrounds. They don't do pools or other resources.
I see.
So
Okay.
Otherwise, trust me, we would be looking at that.
Well, thank you so
Rest
much.
assured.
Okay, thank you. That's all I need to know.
Thank you. So, Vice Mayor Harrington.
Thank you, Mayor. I think I'll just reserve my comments for the one-on-one meeting, but I do want to thank staff. The form and format is vastly improved. I can tell you the first few years I was on council, it was almost impossible to understand. To me, this is quite straightforward. When you read through it, it's easy to reference and cross-reference. I just want to thank staff. I know that it's a major overhaul to get from where we were to this state, so just thank you.
So I think actually for me, I think when I get on board, it's still not in person. So for me, it's really hard to understand the budget, the city budget. Even I'm a businessman, okay, owner. So but it's feel like a totally different to handle my business with the city, the fund. It's but staff. It's actually these 2 years I really improvement, right? It's have the especially I really like I also really like this initial presentation. It's summarized. Otherwise, it's 198 pages. It's hard to understand it, right? It's a lot of time to read. The summarizes also help like community to understand it. So yeah, do good job. Continue moving this kind of good job. Yeah. And I just quick question. It's based on asking the Rebecca for a grant 8.6. I'm interested in that. Even like 3 or 4 years, we already in the community service already talking about this grant. So just simple. I still want to refresh this grant is from the private grant or it's from the state or county or federal.
That was a state grant.
State
Prop
grant.
68 was a state grant.
State grant, okay. So if a state grant, city will apply, but I think for our resident, we should be also communicate our state representative to let them to visit our Smith Park, let them take a look at and see what their response, right? That's, I think, is very important. I want to give to them some pressure to help us to get this grant. So is there any way we can set up a meeting with them, let them visit our Smith Park, let them see the locker room and facilities? They otherwise for me it's really like until like 4 years ago I have a chance to visit. I do the volunteer. I do the inside to painting the whole facility inside the change room. It's for me it's too old. It's really not acceptable for the kids to use our the swimming pool. So even for those current age, we should be doing something. But I know our cities currently financially have problem too, right? It's improved. It's from deficit and the surplus, but still don't have enough money to do that. So I think we should do something hopefully we have the more revenue to help the Smith Park, the swimming pool to renovate it. So right now maybe it's a reality way. It's to push them get our state grant to help us to improve that. Yeah.
Mayor, may I say something along what you're
Okay.
saying?
All right.
You know what might be helpful too, for example, the Kiwanis Club, what we had asked Rebecca and her team is, you know, how can we do one-time projects? And so we decided as a club to invest in the public benches for the parks, because we have families, we have seniors who need benches, and we don't have enough benches. So we bought 3 benches, and you know, to help the families, but maybe if we can parcel it out in smaller pieces, because I know you're involved, for example, with the Lions Club. You're president of the Lions Club. I'm president of the Kiwanis. There's other clubs out there. Maybe if we did it in pieces, you know, we could do something for those stalls, because this has been an ongoing issue, and there is money out there, but it is so competitive. I know Alhambra got some money, but we didn't. But, you know, we could ask our public officials, but it is a competitive process. Everybody has renovations that they need for their parks. But if we can get it in small pieces, maybe some of our local clubs might decide to fund it. I sometimes affectionately, for those who understand what this means, you know, a madrina de los parques, el padrino de los, of this and that. It's, you know, kind of the godparents, I guess, you know, for like quinceañeras, you throw a party and everybody takes a piece of it. That's how I kind of look at it, that, you know, we can wait here and we can hope for monies to come, you know, from LA County or wherever they're going to come. But the reality is everybody's doing it. Everybody's trying to get it. So maybe if you can give us pieces, you can send them out to the different clubs. I know there's at least 2 clubs here that would be receptive. And, you know, if we can invite our local officials, great, you know, but I just know everybody's doing the same thing, so we're not the only ones.
Okay.
But I like the spirit of it all.
Okay.
I like your spirit.
If I can respond to that too, many times the competitive grants, the nice thing about the Prop 68 grant was that it was eligible for refurbishment or for reconstruction of some of these park projects. Many of the grant projects are not eligible for those types of projects. They limit it to new park space, which would be great as well, but we don't have a new area at this point to build a park. So many times the funds are related specifically to that type of a project, new parks or new projects. But that fund, the Prop 68, like I mentioned, we are getting some of that per capita funding. It's not nearly what we need to be able to redo the pool, but we can look at that. We can also look at if we do want to have a visit. We had sent letters as part of the grant project, as part of the grant process to our local officials and to our state officials, and had sent that to them to request their support of that project. But as Councilwoman Menchaca mentioned, there were so many applicants that it wasn't funded. But the other possibility is we also have a new supervisor. We're part of the first district now, so that might be an opportunity as well.
From county.
From county.
Okay.
I've been to other pools that are named after the supervisor, so I know they give funding for pools.
Okay. Okay. All right. That's good. Oh, yeah. It's the Councilmember Menchaca also mentioned if really urgent for the like change room. So do we have any I mean the estimate how much cost if we renovate it inside, maybe to the little bit change to more privacy for the change room, something like that?
We would have to look. We did have it pretty well. There was an architect that we worked with on that Prop 68 grant to pretty well line item things out, although that was looking at a brand new building. So it wasn't necessarily renovating the existing building that we have. So we would need to probably work with an architect to look at what that would cost to renovate the building and get an accurate estimate on that.
Okay.
Just keeping that existing shell and trying to improve that existing facility.
Okay. Maybe staff maybe need to spend some level the research. I think the estimate for the renovated another one, estimate, review it.
Rebuild it.
You tear down and you review it.
Yeah,
My experience, sometimes review it cheaper than renovate it.
right.
Okay, so that's why I hope we have to do this kind of research, see how much costs. So then maybe if we don't do any switch for the swimming pool, maybe just focus on the change room, maybe like a little by little, like the council member already mentioned that, even like a bench or whatever.
Right.
Facility, yeah.
Some of the swimming pool items have to happen, so even to not change the formation of the pool, but the replastering, those are areas of health concern health safety that we need to look at as well. So those are some things that need to be done.
Okay.
But we can definitely look at whether or not it would be a matter of renovating the restroom or the change room area, or whether it would be more cost effective to actually rebuild that area.
Okay, understand. So how long our swimming pool is built? How many years ago that was swimming pool?
I would guess that there are probably some people here that probably swam in that pool in its existing shape. There have been projects done. I don't know if it's been replastered I've been here 21 years. I'm not sure if it's been replastered in that amount of time. So it's been a long time.
Okay, if a long time, probably they need to at least have the patch or plastic, a lot of things needed to do for the swimming pool. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's tough decision, everything though, it's if you just do little things, maybe also you waste money to rebuild it, right? It's better to whole things, yeah.
Right.
Okay. So we think about it, okay.
Mayor, I just want to make sure we end on a really positive note. To Rebecca's credit and her team, one thing that we did back in 2017 is we opened up a park. We had this, I forget how much the grant was. It was pretty significant. We were one of the few cities in the state of California to get that grant, and to be able to open up a park, which was Marshall Park, was pretty amazing and spectacular. And we had people from Sacramento there for the grand opening. So as a community, we are very fortunate to have that green space, specifically for that area. And now we have our police department that has a presence there because they have the traffic bureau there. So that was a huge win for our community. So we haven't gotten Smith Park grants, but boy, we got a beautiful park, Marshall Park. So I just wanted to remind everybody that, that there's some positives out there too.
Yeah, everything have a positive. Yeah. But the Smith Park, we discussed, I think, also on the positive future for us, right? For everybody, for the community. I think I think Smith Park, I've seen used very efficiency. Every time I stop by, I drive by, a lot of people use their park. That's very important for our community. That's I used to, but yeah. So
it has an award-winning handball court too. I didn't realize this, but everybody knows Smith Park is a handball courts.
Okay.
It's a very popular sport, and they come from all cities, and so. Yeah, and Smith Park is actually one of our oldest parks too. And from what I was told by our local San Gabriel military vets, that Smith Park has a very special history, that in the days when there was a lot of discrimination, segregation, that Smith Park was the only park where people of color, the Mexicans, were allowed to go to. And so there's a very special bond at Smith Park. And anyway, so.
Yeah, okay, good. So we need the Marsh Park, the new park, but I also need our renovation or review our Smith Park. Okay, thank you. So, any question? All right. Okay. Thank all the staff. Okay, you still prepare this good the budget, and thanks all the council member, our city attorney, and the city manager. Okay, so hopefully we can the next year have the very reasonable good budget we can approved, right? Okay. Meeting at the next regular city council meeting will be held on Tuesday, May 3rd, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. Meeting adjourned. Okay, I think I'll find that maybe usually our meeting is on a Tuesday, so that's why today is actually Thursday. Okay, meeting adjourned. Okay.